Good evening, everyone. Welcome to my weekly live stream of Node-RED development. Welcome if this is your first time. If you're a regular, do say hi in the chat. Softies UK, good to see you again. Little late starting today, but hopefully we'll make up for that. Jim Bob Squelchy, good to see you back. And Mike, great to see you too. So, what have I got in store for you all tonight? So, over the last few weeks, I've been playing around with the plugins stuff for Node-RED 1.3. And so part of doing the plugins is actually making sure we've got good uses of them. And having good uses of them helps also flush out requirements for them to make sure we've got things in place that are needed. Because the plugin mechanism's intended to be pretty generic. And I hope able to turn to all sorts of uses that I've not even thought of. So last week I spent the stream working on the library plugins stuff. And so if you were here last week, I was doing some work in the editor to make it so that the user could add extra library instances of libraries via the editor. Just to round out on that piece before I go on to what tonight's about, I spent another couple of days fiddling around with the UI. It was useful. It helped flush out some requirements for plugins and some convenience APIs that I've now added into the plugin layer for when you want to handle translations and message catalogs and the like, and that's good. But I also got to the point where, for doing the dynamically adding libraries via the editor, I'd sort of done 80% of the work, and I probably had about another 80% to do, because the UI stuff was mostly there, but then I was starting to get wrapped up in some of the weeds and details of the feature, which probably needed a bit more thought and design work than, frankly, I can justify spending on it. For an initial version, the fact you can already add a new library source via the settings file is, for most users, probably good enough. So I didn't want to spend days upon days doing all this work in the editor to allow you to dynamically add new libraries in the editor, if actually it's initially a bit of a niche feature. So, on that basis, I kind of parked what I was doing on the UI side, tidied up some of the back-end side, and that's much closer to go. So have been working on a proper file system library plugin, which we can publish alongside. So that's that. That's the library plugins. Tonight, I wanted to look at theme plugins. So this was one in the back of my mind for plugins, making it easier for the custom themes to be used by users. And certainly Mauricio in the chat, author of a couple of the great themes that are out there, had suggested a similar idea around how could plugins be used to do custom themes. So I've started noodling away at how that might work. And tonight's going to be, I've made a bit of a head start on it, but there's still a lot to figure out on it. And I've already found a couple nice useful APIs or bits of functionality that the plugins should have that will be useful for themes and will be useful elsewhere. So, particularly with Mauricio in the chat, this I think will be an interesting stream for everyone. So where to begin? Let's begin at the beginning. When you have a theme, and let me come back OBS. There we are. So here is Mauricio's Midnight Red theme. If you're not familiar with the custom themes in Node-RED, the way they work is you npm install them. Now, technically for a theme, it doesn't matter. Quick question, Noxy Boy. So just wondering, are there any UI designs for the Node-RED project, meaning UI concept design, something like Figma, to assist in thrashing out ideas and identify potential usability issues ahead of development? No is the short answer. I do have. Okay, let's do the slightly longer answer. What I have done, I sketch stuff on paper. Often, I often sketch stuff in code and just work things up that way. What I will sometimes do, let me just try and find, is I have got, let's see, no, don't do it like that. I have got a PowerPoint template, which I do have mocked up, very bare bones UI sort of skeletons. So it so for a lot of the major screens. So this I have used in the past when I just want to quickly, when I'm sharing a concept, to quickly sketch it out. And it is very rough and ready. It is just boxes on a page. It's not high fidelity by any means, but it sort of does give a template to follow. I think it would be cool to have something like Figma. I mean, I am not a designer, so I don't have those tools. But yeah, I mean, if you've got the skills and interest, then let's have a chat and see what that could be like. Because yeah, I think that'd be useful. Thanks, Noxy Boy. Let's follow up. Let's have a chat after the stream or some other when in Slack, and we'll see what makes sense. So for the theme, so you npm install it, and then you use the editor theme in your settings file to point at the CSS for the custom theme. Okay, so before we get too far into that, let's see how that actually works. What's that actually doing under the covers? So, delving into the code. So in the Node-RED GitHub, we have packages, node modules, editor API. So the editor API module is the one that sets up all the express routes that serve up the editor. Under there is lib editor, which is all the editor specific stuff, and then theme. And the theme generates an express app to serve up content. It serves up a theme object, which, if I have in the right tab, can't be reached. That's because I have stopped Node-RED running. That doesn't help. Let's get that running. Come on, churn. So that serves up a theme endpoint, which when it starts running, so yeah, a theme endpoint which has the various customizations you can make of the editor, but these are also the ones that are used by the editor to dynamically set. What it also does is it builds up this thing called the theme context. Let me find it. The theme context. And what the theme context contains is a bunch of information like the custom style sheets and custom scripts that the user has provided in editor theme. And what this code does is, so in fact you can see it here, when it's setting up the theme, it calls this utility function serve files from theme, and it gets passed in the theme page CSS. So that's basically it gets passed in this value, which can be an array. It does allow multiple, but this one, which is an absolute path to the CSS file. And it attaches it to our theme app, which is the app that's going to actually serve up the content, with /CSS as the root. And it does the same for scripts. So all serve files from theme does is it just sets up the appropriate routes to serve that file when the editor requests it. Then the let me find it. Where is it? Bear with me. Oh, right. Yes. So what we also have in editor client templates, index.mst, mst because it uses a mustache format. So this is the actual index.html effectively that gets loaded when you access the editor, which is very minimal, but it does have placeholders using the mustache syntax for things like the page title, favicon, tab icon, and then any CSS and any scripts, as well as loading the actual CSS and scripts of Node-RED itself. So it's by rendering this mustache template that the custom style sheets get included here and custom scripts get included here. Okay. So what I want to do is two things. One is what would it mean if one of these modules was a plugin so that the user just has to install it, and then rather than have to get them to provide this full path to a CSS file, just be able to do something like, say, editor theme : and then provide the name of the theme that you want Node-RED to use. So, for example, Midnight Red. And then because that module has registered itself as a plugin, Node-RED takes care of pulling the resources out of that theme plugin and serving them up to the editor. So that's step one, and that's probably where we'll get to tonight. Step two is then, because the runtime will know all of the theme plugins that have been installed, because it's discovered them and they've all registered themselves, it'll have a nice list of all the available themes to be able to then serve that list up to the editor, and then in the editor itself have here you can see, if you've not seen the custom themes before, this is Midnight Red, a nice dark theme. And if I go into settings, as well as having a language select here, we could have a theme select, and to allow the user to pick what theme they want. That gets a bit more involved because you can have multiple users with their own logins, although it's not multi-tenant, so they all still see the same flows. All of these options you can see get stored per user. So each user who can log in gets to choose, gets to customize all these things for themselves. So supporting a dynamic theme is a bit more involved because we have to store that per user, so that when we are loading the editor, we now need to know, is this a user we know that's loading it? And if so, have they selected a different theme to whatever is in the settings file? That gets all a bit more involved, and I probably won't get there tonight. I think there's enough to be getting on with. Okay, so where do we begin? Well, I've already said that. We've already begun. What's the next step? The next step is we're going to look at, let's turn one of these themes into, let's turn one of these themes into a plugin. And Risho, should be no surprises, I've gone with Midnight Red because, it's convenient, it's there, and it's a good theme. So here I've just cloned Midnight Red from Mauricio's repository, and I've made 2 changes at this point. So the package.json, I have added this Node-RED section. So for the plugin scheme, this is just like with custom nodes. This is how plugins identify themselves to the Node-RED runtime. It's got a plugin section, and we're calling this plugin Midnight Red, which makes sense. And we're pointing it at this new file, midnightred.js. So midnightred.js is this. Let me make this both a little smaller and a little wider so you can see it all. Excuse me. So this is the basic structure for a plugin. This .js file exports a single function which will get called passing in red, which is the handle into the Node-RED runtime, and it registers itself, and it will register itself with the name Midnight Red. It has a type of Node-RED theme, and that's going to be important. That's how Node-RED knows what sort of plugin this is. And at this point, I've done a little bit of Node code that will resolve the full path to theme.css. So that's handy. It means we don't have to hard code the full path. We can let Node figure that out for us. Now, one of the things that Mauricio has done in this theme is he's got experimental support for fixing the scroll bars. Now, I'm not going to get into the details of that, but in order to do that, you would include both of these CSS files, theme.css and scrollbars.css. So what would be possible is to register a second plugin, Midnight Red Scroll, for example, and then to have CSS, the CSS property as, have that as an array of theme.css followed by scrollbars.css. So that way this one module would actually register 2 themes. It would be one way of doing it. But of course, that code does nothing today. Well, nothing yet. We're registering our plugins of Node-RED theme. The trick is now, let's get the core of Node-RED to know what to do with those plugins. Right. Okay. Let's just close everything up. So now I've spent a little bit of time to get ahead of this stream just to think through how this might work. And it's a little bit trickier than I was thinking it might be. Not too much, but then it would be boring if everything was straightforward. For the sorry, I just click around, find what I'm looking for. Here we go. So you may recall I talked about, we've got this index file, which is the basic template for the page, which inserts the scripts and it inserts the CSS. So we already have a mechanism for dynamically inserting stuff. For this initial implementation, where it's only going to be set via the settings file, that means it's going to be the same for all users. We don't need to make it dynamic. So we don't need to modify this template at all. We just need to change the logic for how it works out what extra CSS and optionally scripts to add. So let's go back to Editor API theme. Sorry, no, Editor API UI. Okay, Editor API UI, which defines this editor theme. In fact, I've already got a few changes here. I'm going to revert the changes just so I don't spoil any. Well, just so I can talk through it a bit more coherently so you can see what I'm changing as I go. Is that right? Yeah, that's good. Okay, so I've talked about this mustache template file, and this is where we actually do the work. This is the function that gets called. Let me show you it again. So index.js, which sets up all of our routes. When someone does a get request on / of the editor, it will invoke the UI.editor function, or UI.editor route. And UI.editor is here. So it receives the request, and what it'll do is it will render the editor template, and it passes in this theme context object, which will contain all the extra information that needs to be inserted into the template before sending it back as the response. At the moment, this is all entirely synchronous code, as in the call comes in, it goes to theme context and just calls that function, and that returns synchronously the context object for the theme context, all those key value pairs that describe the theme, passes it to Mustache, it does its work synchronously, and then it responds. And if we look at what the theme.context function does here, you can see it just, I see what, yeah, let's get rid of that, because there we are. So this is what it is in the release version of Node-RED today. It just returns this theme context object that already exists. That theme context object gets built up when Node-RED's initializing. So when it starts up, because all of this is static configuration, it doesn't need to be done dynamically. When it's building up its theme app, it also builds up the theme context object with the custom CSS files, scripts, and all the other bits that need to be in to render the template. Now that's good. That all works. The challenge is this code here, which builds up theme context. Let me stick in a big console.log initializing theme app there. And before I save that, I'm just going to go over to, here's our custom plugin. I'm going to stick in a console.log registering midnight red. Okay, so if I hit save on that and quickly switch over to the log. Okay, so all whizzed by, but there we go. So here we started. That's when I hit save. Here you can see it's initialized the theme app right at the start before it's done any real work. And then it's only down here where it's registered the theme. So we have a bit of a problem here now. If we want the theme context to be statically determined this early on, we have the problem that the plugins haven't yet registered themselves. So we don't know what files need to be in the theme context to be served up. So that means we need to do it a bit more lazily. So essentially when now that first request comes in to load the editor, at that point in time is when we should go and figure out, have we got the resources, well, what resources do we need in the theme context? But that isn't work we can do synchronously anymore, because the editor needs to talk to the editor API part needs to talk to the core runtime to find out about what plugins are registered, and that has to be an asynchronous communication. So all of this means this call to context can no longer be synchronous. It's going to have to do some asynchronous work before it can give back its answer. So to begin with, we're going to turn that into an async function, which means it will implicitly return a promise rather than the object we think it will. So this call here is no longer returning theme context, it's returning a promise that will at some point resolve to the object we want. Well, thankfully we can use, because we've made an async function, we can use await, which is the really neat way with, if you've not used async await and promises in Node yet, it can make dealing with promises so much nicer. But I can only put await inside an async function, so they have to stagger them, so make that an async function. And now that all should still just work, as in nothing should be broken. We're not yet going to see any signs of things working, but I mean, the sheer fact we've still got the theme. I should make that clearer. Have I got? Here you can see this is the settings file for my Node-RED, and I have got the editor theme page CSS set, which is why we've got Midnight Red currently active. So at the moment it's active without doing anything with plugins. But the sheer fact it's still showing up here means I haven't broken the connection between knowing what theme I'm currently using and what gets rendered. Okay, so we've made this call to context asynchronous, so that's good. So that means we can, rather than just return theme context, that means we can take our time in here. We can do some extra work. What are we going to do? Well, what I'm going to do first is have a global, and again, as I said, we're going to make this make it so this only works via the settings file to begin with. We're going to have a local variable called active theme. When things get initialized, we are going to say active theme is theme, which you can see right above is set to the editor theme or the empty object. And we're just going to introduce a new variable called theme in that file. Okay, so at this point I'm going to switch back to my settings file. I'm going to comment out this page setting. Okay, and I'm going to, that theme property, I'm going to set to midnight red. Okay, so this is what we want to be able to do. I'll show you that again. So in editor theme, we're going to set editor theme to the name of the theme plugin I want to be using, Midnight Red. Then if I cause Node-RED to restart and reread its config file, if I reload, you can see now I'm back to the default theme because we've not written the code that knows what to do. But that's goodness. So we have active theme. Let's get rid of that console.log. We don't need that. What we're going to do here is we're going to say if active theme, because if we haven't set it in the settings file, then there will be no active theme. What we're going to do is what we're going to do is we need to get hold of the plugin configuration. We need to get hold of this information. Let's get rid of that console.log, we don't need it. We need to find out what CSS and what scripts are part of this theme. How can we do that? So at the moment we're inside the editor API module. So this is the bit that deals with serving up the external APIs used by the editor. The information about the plugins sits inside the runtime of Node-RED. And there's a well-defined API between those two. They're not allowed to talk to each other directly. They have to go via the runtime API. So I've already made a start on this. So on the runtime side, runtime lib API plugins. At the moment, that's got the functions used to serve up plugins to the editor, so editor side plugins. What we're actually going to add here is the ability to get an individual plugin, or get all of the plugins of a given type. For now, we're just going to get one plugin, and we're going to do runtime.plugins.getPlugin ops.id. So it's an async function because everything on the admin runtime API has to be an async function, and it's going to go into the runtime plugins module and get the plugin of the given ID. Okay, that's good. Let's go back to theme. So we're saying if we have an active theme, then now the next question is, do we have a handle on the runtime API inside this file? We didn't earlier today, but I do now pass it in. So I'm just going to keep a handle of it so we can reference it later. I've lost it. Where am I? Here. Okay, so at this point we should be able to say now runtime API.plugins.getPlugin. In fact, we're going to theme plugin is, and we can await it because it's an async API, and we're going to go and try and get the plugin that matches the active theme name. And then I'm going to do a console.log theme plugin and nothing more at this point. Okay, so here we have Node-RED running, restarted. Now if I refresh, we get undefined printed out. I was hoping for a bit more than that, but it's a start. Something got printed. What we're going to do is just confirm. We'll print out active theme just to confirm what's the actual plugin we try to get, because okay, so we've tried to get Midnight Red. Okay. Oh, yeah, no, I'm foolish. Something else to know about this, the runtime API, is all of the functions take an object with key value parameters in. And you would have seen, you pass in opts, and for this one, ops.id, and every function has a well-defined set of properties. For example, the user calling this API function, and the HTTP request if we need to log it. So at a later point, actually no, scratch that. So at this point, the bug was I was just passing the ID. In fact, it needed to be an object with an ID property. So I'm now doing that. Okay, that's restarted and refresh. And there we go, Midnight Red. And here is the plugin. So you can see the type. Oops. Okay, you can't see when I copy and paste over the top of it. So effectively, this is the object that was registered for the plugin with the type of Node-RED theme and the CSS. And in fact, you can see a couple of the properties that the Node-RED registry, when the plugin gets registered, it augments it with some other properties. So the ID of the plugin and what npm module provided that plugin. Good. So now we have access to this CSS property. What do we need to do with it? Well, what we need to do is, at the moment we've got a list of files on disk that make up the theme, and they need to be served up to the editor. Well, we need to set up the express routes to serve up those files. So that's what we were already doing, and we've already got the code for serve files from theme. So take a list of files and serve them up. So what we can actually do is pinch both of those. And what we're going to do, what are we going to do? So, what are we going to do? We are just trying to think. I know exactly what we need to do. I'm just trying to think through what the right order is to make it make sense. Yeah, I'm just going to paste that code in. But we need, so that's just the code we have above, but we need to do it slightly differently here. So what we're going to say is if theme plugin, because it's entirely possible that the user has specified a theme name that doesn't exist, in which case theme plugin would be undefined. So if theme plugin, which is, this means we have a plugin, which is good. And then we can say if theme plugin.css, so it does provide CSS, then do some of that. And if theme plugin.scripts, we'll do some of that. And I say some of that, we're still going to change this code in a sec because it's not quite appropriate at the moment. Yeah, no, you what? I think we're gonna. Yeah, we want to use the theme plugin CSS and theme plugin scripts. Okay, so if we have an active theme, we go and get that plugin. If that plugin exists and that plugin has CSS, we'll add that CSS to what gets served, and we'll add the scripts if there are scripts. Let's go refresh Node-RED. I refresh, and there is Midnight Red for you, ladies and gentlemen. So the basic mechanism is now working. What isn't going to work, though, is now every time this editor page is refreshed, it's calling this code. It's going to get the plugin. It's serving up the files. So it's going to add, every time you load the editor, it's adding more HTTP routes to serve up the same files just over the top. So the express router will just get longer and longer with every request, which is not the best trick to if you don't want to be leaking memory like a sieve. So we only want to do this once for the theme. So what I'm going to do, again, this is a pragmatic little hack. We're going to create a flag, initialized flag, set that to false. And then we're going to come down here and we are going to say if, hold on, just running through it. So the code I'm writing here is I do have one eye in the future where each user might have a different preference for their theme. So there's a few different ways I could tackle this, but this is how I'm going for it now. We're going to do well, call it result because why not? We are going to take a clone of theme context. So theme context has been statically determined at the top. We're going to clone it so we can modify it. So that would allow different requests to get different modified versions. So when you had two users, they would each get their own theme. Having said that, the code I'm about to write now wouldn't allow for that, but we'll run with it anyway. So we're saying if active theme and if active theme, oh no, okay, thinking again, forget what I said about cloning, we're not doing that yet. So we've got theme context, which is what we're going to return. It's a global, that's okay. If active theme and not active theme initialized. Okay, so there is an active theme, but we haven't yet done anything about it. We're going to do something about it, and then we'll set active initialized to true, which means next time we won't repeat that work. Okay, now what we're going to do is, well, that's goodness. So we'll only set up the roots now once and update the theme context global once on that first request that comes through. So that's better, and we're not going to leak. What this will do, however, is if the user has a mix of both theme plus their own custom CSS and their own custom scripts, at the moment this is just going to override those completely for whatever the theme provides. So rather than just, let me just check what serve files from theme, pretty sure returns an array in all instances. Yeah, so serve files from theme, it creates an array and returns an array. Even if it's you're only passing in one, it will always return an array, which is good to know. So at this point, page.css might already exist and might be an array. So rather than just overwrite it, we want to concatenate the theme with what's already there. Now the question is, what takes precedence? Does the theme take precedence, or does the user specified stuff take precedence? My gut feel is the theme goes first, and then any other CSS and scripts get added afterwards. My gut feel says that that's probably the right way around to do it. So what does that mean? That means we want to, rather than just assign it straight to theme context, we're going to say, let's just go and get that list of what they are first. And then we're going to say, we're going to then set theme context page CSS to be CSS files concatenated with what was already there, bearing in mind what is already there might not exist. And what happens if you concatenate undefined? So let's just do a quick test. So let's create an array and let's do a.concat undefined. Yeah, see, it's stuck undefined on the end of the array. That's not what we want. That's better. So anyway, this will get things done in the right order. So let's just repeat that for scripts, script files, do that work, and then theme context page.scripts, and we want the themes script files concatenated with anything that was already there, otherwise the empty array. Okay, so what have we got? We will grab the CSS and scripts from the theme and add them to the theme context so they get used. We will prepend them to any extra CSS and scripts the user already has in their editor theme. Yeah, good. That's going to work. happy days. Let's see. Well, check the log for any. Oh, close that one. No errors of note there. Refresh. Cool. So that's worked. Now let's. Oh, that's another interesting test. Let's go. No, we don't need that window. Let's go find. So if you recall, what did I do? I showed you how this theme actually has its scrollbars.css, so Midnight Red Scroll. So now, to change theme to Midnight Red Scroll, should just be a case of changing this name to Midnight Red Scroll and then restarting Node-RED. So let's just trigger a restart. That all looks good. Now let's refresh. Now I've never tried this theme, so oh, and look, my scroll bars have now been themed. Very nifty. Yeah, so that's much easier for a user because they haven't got to worry about paths or anything like that. They can just install the module and then put the name in the settings file. Isn't that nice? Okay. What was there was something else on my to-do list I thought of. Let me just pause for a moment whilst I think. Right. So I mentioned early at the start, one of the reasons for doing this sort of work, as well as it being a useful feature, is the plugins API is brand new, and we want to make sure it's got the right features in place. BallGeek, this will be in 1.3 if all goes well. So hopefully 1.3 beta in the next week or so. Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, it will be in 1.3, and I hope 1.3 will arrive, or at least a beta of it in the next week or so. Plus, particularly for this feature, it will then require the theme authors to publish new versions of their npm modules. The great thing being, all of these changes I've made are backwards compatible in the sense that earlier versions of Node-RED don't know what to do with this plugins property. They will just ignore it. They don't know about this random JavaScript file. They'll just ignore it. So you can continue to just do exactly as the README says, as in set up to use the theme like this. But if you're on 1.3 or newer, you'll be able to do it much more simply. Because, yeah, having to set the full absolute path to the file is perhaps a little cumbersome, particularly in environments where you don't necessarily know what directory you're in. You're in a hosted environment, you're in Docker, all those sorts of things. It just adds complication. Much nicer just to be able to use the name of the theme you want to use. Okay, let's keep going. There is a gaping security hole, which we need to plug. Or not a gaping hole. There is a potential security hole with all of this that we need to plug. Let's just open my file system. I'm in my home directory. I'm going to create a file called secret.txt saying I am a secret. So this is a file in my home directory called secret.txt. So, right, let's just see some questions. How do I get a theme with the new options 1.3? So you'd still npm install themes just as you do today. The key difference here is you'd just have to modify your settings file with the name of the theme you want. Once you've npm installed it, the README for the theme will tell you what the names of the themes it provides are. So you would just put that in your settings file. You don't have to worry about getting the full paths to individual files, particularly themes that might have multiple files. Richo, what would happen if I split the theme and scrollbar CSS into two different plugins? Well, yeah, I mean, you can absolutely do that. You could put those into two separate npm packages, but what I've shown here is this one npm package actually registers two plugins, one with just theme.css and one with theme and scrollbars.css. So a single JavaScript file like this could contain lots of plugins. So you could actually publish a whole collection of themes in one npm module if you had a whole set of themes in a family of themes that you wanted to keep together. So then the user just needs to know from the documentation the name of the plugins that get registered and which one they would put in their settings file. Right, security hole. I've created a file called secret.txt in /users/null. Let us say that Maurizio was not the very good person he is, and let's say he published a theme which hard-coded in a path like that. Now, this could be any file on the file system. Let's see what that does. Have I edited that? So I just need to restart Node-RED to reload that. And of course I've edited the wrong I edited Midnight Red. I was configured to use Midnight Red scroll. Let's go back to Midnight Red. I mean, it's an interesting question whether publishing one module with lots of themes in or individual module, one theme per module, which way around do you want to go? To be honest, they're not very big. These are pretty tiny CSS files. The Midnight Red, the CSS, and this is uncompressed. This could be compressed or minified. I mean, at the moment, this is 3,000 lines. Minified, that would be a fraction of that. So, yeah. Anyway, we're using Midnight Red. All right. Midnight Red has said, let's serve up users null secret.txt as part of the theme. Okay. If we reload, I believe if we inspect the page, no, not inspect, sorry. If we view source, you can see here secret.txt. Ooh, if I click on that, we've exposed a arbitrary file from my file system to the world, to anyone with access to my Node-RED theme. And because themes are not the theme roots don't get put behind admin auth, they get loaded by any user. This would be a hole. So someone could publish a malicious theme. I mean, yes, someone could publish a malicious theme that had all sorts of code that read all sorts of files and then did malicious things. But there's a more general principle here of we want to put in the checks to make this impossible. We don't want a theme to be able to get you to serve up files that weren't inside that plugin. So how do we do that? Well, we've got this code that so here's the code which went and got the plugin and then called serve files from theme, and it does the work to set up all those routes. What we want to know is we want to restrict themeplugin.css. It should only be allowed to point at files inside the plugin. All right. In fact, when you look at the plugin, you can see how I've had to do path.join dir name and the CS file because we need those to be absolute paths. And dir name, if you don't know Node.js, is a built-in that automatically resolves to the absolute path to the file that bit of text exists in. Really useful for figuring out where you are on the file system. But it's not very nice boilerplate code to have to, for the theme authors to have to put all of this in. What would be much nicer is for all of these paths to be treated as relative to the plugin itself. Okay, so it would be much nicer for me just to say theme.css because that's the file inside my plugin. Okay, well, if that's what we want to be able to do, the challenge we have now is this code here. It's now just going to get theme.css. But this code here has no idea where that plugin's come from. All right. Let's stick back in our console.log theme plugin. And we reload that. Yeah. So here you can see the plugin, theme.css, and that absolute path to users null secret.txt. Now, I talked earlier about how the plugin gets augmented with these other properties, the ID and module. What we're going to do right now is modify the core plugin code. We're going to add in another property here, which will be the base path of the plugin, basically what directory does this plugin exist in. So that gives us something to a root path to resolve all of its contents from. Okay, how do we do that then? We need to delve into the registry. So the registry is the internal component of Node-RED that is where all plugins and nodes get registered, and it keeps a list of all of them. Here we have plugins. So I think I might be setting myself up. No. Okay, so register plugin. This is what gets called when this call to red.plugins.register plugin ends up here. And this then goes and gets from the registry the module information, what module is loading this plugin. I bet if I do a console.log module, you'll see a lot more Gorp because I've got lots of plugins. But so here's an example. Here's a is that a good example? Here we are. Test plugin we've got this path property. Aha. Okay, so we have in the module information in the registry, we already know the base path of the plugin. So somewhere in here you can see where we augment the plugin definition with the ID and module. So what we're going to do here, having got hold of the module object, we're going to say definition.path equals module.path. Does that make sense? Yeah, I think that makes sense. Okay, so Node-RED's restarted. So now when I reload the editor, here you can see we've printed it out, and you can see we've now got the path property, which is the full path to the plugin. Okay, one step at a time. That's good. That means we can now go back to here, theme plugin.css. What we can do is, well, we either do it here or we do it in serve files from theme function. Yep, Jim Bob's quote sheet. I'm coming to exactly the point you're asking. What happens if they set the file to ... Yes, we're going to come to that. Right, what we're going to do is a bit of sanitization here. We're going to say CSS. We're going to say, one thing at a time. Right, theme plugin CSS. If it's not an array, because we support it being just a single string or an array, so we are going to force it to be an array. Okay, and then we're going to theme plugin.css hold on, before I complete that thought, I'm just going to remind myself what code this does. Theme value. Right, so this function that serves up the files, it loops over the array, dealing with each one in turn. And to serve file, what does that do? So that will return null if it doesn't exist. That's okay. What I am going to do is I'm going to add a little check just to save heartache, and only try to serve up a file if it's not, or if it's not null. If the string is not null. Because down here what we're going to do, theme plugin.css is theme plugin.css.map. We are going to take the file, and what we're going to do is first say full path equals theme plugin.path, the new the new value we've mapped through from where it's being loaded. In fact, let me just jump to the top. Have I got it? Yes, I've got path. We are going to do path.join the base path of the plugin plus the file. Okay. And then I'm going to go look at the documentation, because I can never quite remember the path.html for Node.js. We are going to do a resolve of it. Is that what we're going to do? Yeah, that's what we're going to do. Rather than a join, we're going to do a resolve. So path.resolve, scanning through the documentation. So here's the good example. It takes each of those segments of a path, joins them together, and it will resolve any relative paths, so ... and so on. Which is nice, jolly nice of it. Then, so that means we've got the absolute path with no more relative components. We can then say if full path.index of theme plugin path is not equal to 0. So we've got the base path of the plugin. We've got the file. We've joined them together and resolved any relative components. So what we should have is a file, absolute file path that is relative. Well, the absolute file path that is inside the plugin's path. So we can now look at that full path, and if it doesn't start with the theme plugin path completely, that means it has tried to traverse out of where it should be. So if that is the case, we can just silently ignore it and, well, return null. So what about case insensitivity in silly windows? Well, that's an interesting point. Is that going to catch us out? That could catch us out. Well, no. Yeah, you ask a good question. Okay, what can we do? See, the other approach is we say if this is the other option, trying to look for these relative paths, is if the file name contains 2 dots, then disallow it. So that will prevent any paths with ... in. For a theme, or okay, they could be legitimate paths that have A/B/C ... something. So it's got ... in, but it still resolves inside the plugin. But it'd be pretty odd for someone to do that when in testing it just wouldn't work. So now the other option that the path module will deal with is this relative function. Oh, which way around should we do it? No, you know what? I'm gonna say, once we've resolved it, if the full path doesn't start with the theme plugin's base path, then we'll return null. I'm happy that that's the right logic. If there are edge cases on Windows, then so be it. Mike, better to filter out bad URLs here rather than check for null. Yeah, that was one of the pauses I did make. Should we just substitute null here? The problem with filter is we've got to do both a map and a filter. So we have to do the map because we need to convert just the file name to the full path So we have to do a map. Then, so we could then do a secondary pass of a filter, and say something like that. So that will filter out any of the null values. And then up here, I'm going to leave the if null up there just for... No, I'm not. Let's take that out. It would just... I guess I'm trying to over-optimize the... It would mean we're doing 3 array traversals. We're doing a map, a filter, and then this iterate over it to do the serving. By putting the null check in there, we skip out the filter pass. But yeah, for a bit of cleanliness, then why not? Right. Let me see. So that's all good. So we've now got this array. So we now pass that in there instead. And delete that. Let's now have a look at what we get. So if we reload, there we go. The theme has loaded properly, which is good. So we've managed to resolve the path properly. If we view the page source, you can see now we've only got theme.css. And just to confirm that, if I try reloading secret, you get the secret. Okay, so we've plugged that potential hole, which is good. What we now need to do is a lot of copy and paste. To do the same deal for scripts. Rather than copy and paste it, what we're going to do, so serve files from theme is serve files from theme, we are going to add another argument, which is base directory. Okay. In fact, yeah, this is better doing it this way. We're gonna so rather than duplicate all this code, what we're going to do is theme plugin.path. We're going to pass in as an optional 4th argument to serve files from theme the directory which the file must be within, if that makes sense. Because if we do that properly here and we do that here, and we restore that, and we get rid of all that. Basically, all that code we've just written, I'm going to rewrite up here, so I only have to write it once. And what we're going to say is, we don't need any of that. What we're going to say is the full path is, well, no, we're going to, if we've passed in a base directory, we're going to say the full path is all this path.resolve of the base directory and what is it? And the file name, which is array I, and then get rid of that, get rid of that. So if the full path, it's exactly the same logic. So if the full path doesn't begin with the base directory, then we do a continue, so it skips this one and moves on. So that's good. We've added the same logic, but now this will work for both scripts and CSS. And I think should be fine as a person by node red. Yeah. No, it should all be good now. Oh, I've just reloaded the Twitch chat window. Oh no, we're good. It's refreshed it. So we reload. Oh, no, that's not worked. Look, I've lost my theme. Why has that lost my theme? Okay, something went wrong. What has gone wrong, he says. Let's put some... Right. What's gone wrong? Not getting the theme anymore. So it has created that path. Yeah, that will look well. Okay, I've mucked it up somehow. So you can see it's checked both files, but it's returning an empty array. What have I done wrong? I'm saying if full path Oh, this feels like one of those. I've been going too long and I'm tired. It is 9:30 in the evening for me here, so there we go. So we get a 0 and we get a -1. So 0 yeah, that should work. So why is yes. Because I should be using full path when I actually ask it to serve the file. So what we're going to say is let full path equal array I. So let's assume we've been given a full path. If we've got base directory, then we'll change what full path is, and then we'll pass in full path to the actual serving code and get rid of console.log down there. It's reloaded, refreshed, and we have midnight theme. Excellent. And view source refresh. Yep, we've still not leaked secret in. Cool. I think we're done. I think we have theme plugins working. Yeah. Okay, we've got the basic idea of theme plugins working, so you can set them via the settings file. There's a bunch more stuff to do to provide a list of themes available in the browser. I'm partially tempted to keep going, but you know, it's been, what, 1 hour and 20 minutes? Let's see what we can do. The tricky bit is there's a couple slightly less clear ownership questions in terms of how we can move around the information we need to the editor. We can make a start. I'm not going to go over this too much. What do we need? So we've got the settings endpoint, which includes the editor theme with a list of the available languages. Now, curiously, we also have the theme endpoint, which customizes. Now, I'm sure I have a good reason for having split up. I think that's because editor theme is user. This /settings is going to be user specific. So this is based on what user is logged in to the editor. So in fact, this list of languages probably shouldn't be on the /settings endpoint. It should probably be on /theme, arguably, because it's generic information. But right, I'm not going to sweat that for now. What we're going to do is go to settings.js, and that /settings endpoint comes from this call to runtime API.settings.getUserSettings, I think. Let me just double check that. Console.log get user settings. Okay, so let's reload the settings endpoint. Go to our log. Oh yeah, and it's not. Okay, I'm in the wrong place. Where should I be looking? That's because it's in the admin API. Right, runtime settings, not user settings. So yes, this is where we want. So there you can see we pick up the languages of the available editortheme.languages. Okay. And so the question in my mind, it's just trying to work out which are the right runtime API to pass back information about the installed themes, because the themes are nothing to do with the runtime setting. So yeah, it gets a little blurred here in terms of where's the right place to put this logic. Should it be in settings or should it be in /themes? I'm just going to go, let's have a quick delve into the editor code. And we're going to have a quick look to see, no. Where do I load that /theme endpoint from? There. Yeah, this is all where it initializes. Yeah. You know what? It seems silly to put the list of available themes in anything other than the theme endpoint. So let's quickly go. So here we have, so we're back in editor API. Here you can see us set up the /theme root, which is handled by theme.app. Subtly, it's handled by whatever is returned by theme.app. That's, again, because it's statically. So here is a function which creates this express app that any request to /on, which is the same as /theme, returns the theme context. And then we return theme app. That's all fine. What we're going to do here is same tricks we made before. We're going to make that an async function. We're going to get, say, theme plugin list equals runtime await runtime API plugins plugins.get plugins by type, and they are Node-RED theme plugins. And we're going to say theme context.themes. That's just, again, for consistency. I sorely am tempted to move the language list over here as well. I'm not going to do that right this second, but it does feel more logically consistent. Now that's entirely the wrong thing for me to have done, because it's going to return empty list. Interesting. Why is that? Excuse me. Why is that an empty list? Get plugins by type. Node-RED theme. I'm pretty sure that's the type we set. Node-RED theme. And get plugins by type should be returning. Same as before. This is meant to be an object with key value pairs. It's not. Yeah, same mistake I made earlier. And there you are. So now the /theme endpoint includes all the plugins, but what we actually want is just a list of their IDs. We just want a list of their names. We don't need all that other metadata. So we're going to map that to just return theme.id. So when I reload, there we go. So we've got themes, and then we're also going to set theme context active theme. There we go. Now, at the moment, active theme is a global, so it will be the same for all users. We are moving towards each user being able to set their own. So at some point, not now, not tonight, rather than just returning the global, that will have to be keyed on the user that's making the request. So we return what theme that user has active. Yeah. For a single tenant system, I do put a lot of effort in making it multi-user, even if it's a single tenant multi-user. But all right, so now we've got that returning to the editor. What we can do is I'm just going to close all these windows, because sometimes I just get too many windows open and I lose track of where I am. So we're going to dive now into the editor code, and somewhere in amongst all this, I think, was where I loaded up the theme stuff. In fact, I think if I go to Node-RED now and refresh, come down to the console, I should now be able to say, nope, I was wrong, I can't say that. Okay, why can't I say that? I bet it's going to let me say languages. That works. But that doesn't. Okay. Yep. Okay, I put something in the wrong place. I've put Right. I put active theme here, and I shouldn't be putting that there because we anticipate that to be user specific. So it's okay for themes to be a hard-coded list of themes. That's not user specific. But it's when it gets the settings, which is could be user specific, and then it goes and grabs settings from theme. Sorry, I'm bouncing around a bit, but there we go. Theme.settings. And in here we will say, how do we initialize theme settings? Yep. Yeah, I can say if theme dot has own property. Oh no, theme dot active theme, then theme settings dot active theme equals. Is this right? Yeah, theme. Let's stop calling it active theme, and the external API will just call it theme. Oh, you know how sometimes when you read a word too much, it loses meaning. The theme has now lost all meaning to me. Right, if I refresh here. Refresh, no. Okay, it's not there. Refresh there, so we've got themes. Okay, something's gone wrong. Just trying to get the information into the right place. Oh, there, yes, because it's not theme. If I refresh there, so you can now see in the settings endpoint, which will be user specific, it now tells us what the active theme is. So if I refresh this and I call red.settings.theme the theme property, it returns midnight red. Yeah, it's not. So I've called it active theme internally, but in terms of the externals, what you as a user would put in your settings file, I just called it theme. So yeah, I got myself confused there. Active theme is what I've called the variable internally, just because I use the word theme far too much in this file. But as far as the externals go, like in the settings file, we want that to mirror what's in your settings file. So the settings endpoint should look similar to your settings file. So we have the theme. And this is why this list of languages feels wrong there. That's not user specific. There might be a user preference for which language to use if they've made a selection. In fact, bit of a detour. Am I right in that assumption? If I go to settings, see it says language browser default and gives me this list of translations. Well, let's go to Russian. I updated the Russian. Well, if I hit close and then if I reload the settings endpoint, no. If I reload this one, everything's now in Russian, which is quite cool. But I had thought that might get reflected in here, but it's not been reflected in there. Okay, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. Thankfully I know what to click to get back to English, or browser default, as that may say. Reload, and thankfully we're back in English. Right, what am I doing? So we've now got a list of the themes in the theme endpoint. We've got the active theme in the settings endpoint. And we're slowly getting everything where it needs to be, so we can give the user a nice list of them. But what I can't find, what I've lost, oh, here it is, no. Somewhere in here is, I had it before, but I lost it. Can anyone see, where do I load the theme? There. Where am I? Yeah, red.js, thought so. So it loads the theme endpoint. Okay, and it doesn't actually store it anywhere. It's kind of, yeah, information is just shoved. Which way round should we do this? I'm deep in thought. Okay. What I would like to be able to do is to be able to call red.settings.theme themes and to get that list. And that doesn't work at the moment because that information is not in the /settings endpoint. But it, yeah. Okay, this is settings. Where am I? Build editor. Oh, it's all part of time. Yeah. So the theme stuff is loaded before the settings is loaded. So at the point in time we get that /theme. We would not yet have initialized red.settings. And where does red.settings get initialized? Sets all this up, that's all good, and then calls load, and that's good. Does all of its loading, and that's good. Load user settings. Set user settings. User settings equals data. Okay, but where does the theme stuff get pulled out? It comes out of red.settings.editor theme. Okay. So I just going quiet whilst I set properties. So the problem I've got is at the point we get the list of themes, we've not yet loaded red.settings. So it's a question of where do we stick this information out of red.settings so it sticks around, knowing that we're about to load the settings endpoint and we don't want that overwriting anything we store. And because if we want to access it, as I show here, red.settings.theme, then it has to be safely squirreled away under editor theme. Yeah, so we load the settings endpoint. There, that's it. We call set properties with data. And set properties so this is where we would set editor theme, and you can see here we would just override anything that was already there. So do we do the quick hack because it's 9:45 and I've been talking for an hour and 3/4, or do we do the more elegant solution? I mean, it's a trick question, surely. Right, no one watch me do this, all right? Known themes. If theme.themes known theme. So we load the theme endpoint and we just stick it in a local variable inside here. Right, and then down here we initialize settings. Once that's done, we just intercept before we call load editor. Before we call load editor, we say if known themes red.settings.editor theme equals red.settings. We ensure we have an editor theme. And then we do red.settings.editortheme.themes equals known themes. So basically we load it early. At the point in time when we can access settings, we then save it into runtime settings. And I've just refreshed the wrong window again. Hopefully the chat's still working. So now when I call red.settings, it's not worked. Okay. That didn't work. What have I done wrong? Let's just log what we're getting at this point. Just make sure we're... Oh no, I see it. See, I've been looking at this word too much. I misspelt that instance of the word themes. Yep, theme. So now when I call red.settings.theme themes, we get the array. We get them. We know them. And when I call theme, we get midnight red. Awesome. Okay. So let's go to UI user settings, and somewhere in here there must be the language. In fact, yeah. Oh, true. Ooh. Okay. Nice. Talk amongst yourselves. If this works, then I'll be thanking previous me who kind of over-engineered some of this. Editor theme. I'm going to set local to true for now. I'm going to set that to theme, which may or may not work. Ooh. Options. Okay, so what am I doing? So the view settings dialog is programmatically generated. All of this is programmatically generated because I got bored of laying out HTML components. So the view settings is this array of options, array of objects and this top one is this top object is what defines the browser language selector. So it's an options, which means it gives a drop down, and it has anyway, it is what it is. We are going to just hard code some stuff. I'll need to get some more translations done. Default. And then we're not going to sort. We're not going to translate these. They're just the IDs of the. Sorry, I'm talking in half sentences. I kind of realise what I'm trying to do here. I think that might do it. If that works, I'll be settings. We now have a theme, and you can now select a theme. It doesn't do anything, but you can select from the available themes, including default. So, and if I change that to Midnight Red Scroll, for example, okay, nothing's changed, but if I bring the settings dialog back up, it's got Midnight Red Scroll. It's remembered that value. And if I go back to default settings, it's remembered it's got default. Awesome. Yeah, that was easy. The hard part is now changing the theme dynamically. Yeah. That's the hard part. So, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to keep going. My wife has, because we're in lockdown, we take turns to go for walks in the evening once the kids are in bed. And my wife's gone out for a walk. And, I've got nothing else to do. In fact, I haven't been very productive today. This is the most productive I've been for ages. So I'm actually in a groove. So do not feel compelled to keep watching. I'm going to keep going. I'm happy to talk to you if you're here. But I'm just going to keep going for the moment, because the great thing is, when I'm live streaming like this, I can't get distracted by the internet. I haven't read Twitter for at least an hour and 50 minutes now. Who knows what's happening in the world? Right. What we're going to do, we're going to take away this local true setting. All right. Yeah, I mean, by all means, Mike, always great to have you. Do drop off. But, if you're sticking around, guys, then I congratulate you. So I've taken away that local true value. That is because if it was flagged as local, then it gets stored in local storage in the browser. Taking away that setting, if I go to network and let's just shrink that down, I'm going to reload. I'm going to clear the history of network requests, bring out settings. That's interesting. Oh, yeah. I'm going to change to, let's say, Midnight Red Scroll and hit close. And look, we got this extra request to the user endpoint, which had a body. So that's basically sent back all of the editor preferences. Oh, come on. Back to the runtime. And there, Midnight Red Scroll. So under editor theme, Midnight Red Scroll. Now, okay, I don't like editor theme, so let's back off. Let's call it theme to be consistent. Okay. So if we reload. Come on. Right. Let's all good. Right, let's bring up... Oh dear, I've got lots of text selected. Right, let's bring up the settings dialog. So we've got default selected at the moment. Change that to midnight red. Hit close. Now if I reload and go back, midnight red. It has remembered. So that's good. So what have we achieved? We've now got a list of the available themes in the settings dialog, and it is remembering. And when I say remembering, I'm not kidding around. If I if we go look at .config.users.json, so this is the runtime file that stores all the users' settings. Somewhere in here. Editor. In fact, I'm going to delete editor theme because we're not going to use that one. So here you can see in the runtime settings the theme property. And that's for the underscore user, and that's because I'm not logged in as anyone at the moment. Okay. What does this mean? What does this mean? It means the editor is loading up. There's another endpoint, settings/user. So this is the actual user customizations for the editor on a per user basis. And there you can see, okay, editor theme's still there, but we fixed that. So theme is in there. And what that actually tells me is if we go all the way back to where we were creating our responses, when we were sending back active theme somewhere, which I think was that one, I'm going to get rid of that because... Am I going to get rid of that? No, we're not going to get rid of that because that's the default theme. That's the theme that is in the settings file. And just because it's in the settings file, it means that's the one, if the user says go back to default, that's the one they should get. Is that right? Yeah, this is where it gets a little tricky now, because what is the default theme? Is it the one in the settings file, or is it the vanilla Node-RED theme, the unthemed Node-RED? I don't know. I don't know which would be the right one to fall back to. I think that's going to need a bit more thought, but what I'd really like to be able to do at this point is to be able to say, wouldn't it be cool if at this point in the code, when we're actually doing all this work to serve stuff up to determine the active theme, which user is it and what is their active theme? So we are going to remind ourselves, how are the user settings returned? So there we have runtime settings. Those aren't the ones we want. Here we have user settings. These are the ones we want. Okay. Okay. Thinking it through. Right. We need to know the user who's accessing the editor at this point in time. Do we know that at this point in time? Haha. That's a roadblock, and that's why I'm going to wrap things up for the moment. Everything I've been doing is trying to get to the point where when we serve up the editor, we serve up the editor with the theme the user has selected in the editor. There is a problem. The way Node-RED user authentication currently works is the initial request to load the editor is anonymous. It does not know the name of the username trying to access it. All subsequent requests are properly authenticated, but that initial load of index.html, the editor, is anonymous. And because we want to be able to put in the right path to the theme CSS for that request, we don't know what user it is, so we don't know what theme they've got selected. So that's going to need a little bit more picking apart to do this properly. So I'm going to, for now, comment out this option. Oh, right. Going to comment out adding the option for the theme to the view settings dialog. I'm going to step away gracefully, I think, as I've been going for 2 hours, and that's a long stream. Yeah, it's going to need a bit more finessing to figure out how to properly load the editor in the right theme. And now I've remembered that this is also why the editor language is handled the way it is, because anyway, I'm going to call it there. But nonetheless, I've got now a design for theme plugins which I can get written up and put on the design repository, so for theme authors to follow. We've got it working. It's going to make things much more consumable. If we can get to the point where it's also selectable in the editor, even better. But it's going to take a bit more work than I think I can sensibly do at 10 o'clock at night. But yeah, really pleased with the progress we've made. Hopefully you've been following. Hopefully that's useful. As ever, what? Yeah, this will be up on YouTube. If you're not already watching on YouTube, do say hi, do leave a comment. If it's your first time, do like and subscribe. Do follow me on Twitch. I'm here pretty much every Monday, 8 p.m. my time, UK time, if that wasn't obvious. Let me know if there are particular things you're interested in. We've got 1.3 coming right around the corner. And then eyes turn to 2.0. That's our next scheduled release in April. We've got plenty of big stuff planned. Just need to start working on it, really. That's the challenge. So have a great week. Stay safe. Do come say hi in Slack if you want to chat about anything you've seen offline, online, but not live on the stream. Otherwise, I'm signing off. Good night all. Have a good one.